Hey guys, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andre Sigers, and we're joined by Derrick Binder to discuss the news that Nintendo and other companies won't be at PAX East this year. So let's get right into it. Alright Derrick, so some interesting news came out yesterday that Nintendo won't be at PAX East this year. They won't have an official presence in the expo hall, and they won't be showing off their games. And this caused, kind of a mini uproar among at least PAX fans, I think, which is a sizable community, because Nintendo's historically had some kind of presence at PAX. I think really, except for maybe the first year, they've been there every year since. And by first year, I mean way back at in 2003. So they've had a long history there. So it is kind of surprising to see them not show up here at all. But what's even more surprising is the news that actually quite a few big companies won't be showing up, like Sony, Sega, EA, Capcom, and Konami all won't be there, despite most of them, I believe, historically having some kind of presence at PAX. So, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. What's your take on all this?
Well, it's struck me as odd because I've been going to PAX for a few years now. I've missed a couple. I haven't gone to all of them, of course. But, there's always a presence of Sony, Nintendo, and a lot of these other big companies. And it was interesting to see Nintendo get piled upon when people found out that they weren't going, because they're like, oh man, they need to show off their games, things are in trouble. And then we find out that all these other studios aren't going, save for, there are some big companies going, like Square, Ubisoft, 2K Games, Microsoft, stuff like that. But it's still really weird, especially like Nintendo's weird, Sony's weird, EA is really weird.
Yeah.
That they're not going to be there. And I guess the whole idea is like, what the heck is going on at PAX? Like, is it just these companies just have nothing to show, which I find a little odd, or they're saving up for E3, or maybe it's a whole blowback from that whole situation that happened last year.
Just a controversy with Mike from Penny Arcade?
Yeah, the comments they made about the whole one comic they made.
Right.
And people blowing back, but I saw a lot more blowback from indie developers than the major developers, so I don't think it's that. I really don't.
Especially when you consider that it seems like indie developers have a huge presence this year. And it seems like their presence has been growing year, with each new installment of PAX. And it seems this year like they have definitely a sizable, representation on the show floor. I personally don't know why all these companies opted out. It could be a coincidence. It did seem odd that Nintendo wouldn't have, but Nintendo's always gone, to their own beat, by their own standards. So it's like, okay, that's just Nintendo being Nintendo. But then you see all these other companies dropping out, and it does make you wonder, if something has happened, or if they just no longer see the value, perhaps, in going to PAX East. Because
that could be.
PAX East is in kind of an awkward time of the year, where it's like right between GDC and just a few weeks before E3. So maybe these companies just want to hold out for E3. Although in the case of Nintendo, I was confident they were going to be there, because they actually have a fair amount of games they could show off at PAX. Being of course Mario Kart 8, which comes out before E3, Mario Golf, same thing, NES Remix 2, and I think they have
Kirby.
And Kirby, of course, right? Yeah. So they wouldn't even need to have like as big a booth as they did say last year, but they could still have a sizable representation. And I think Mario Kart, would get decent, foot traffic.
Oh, there'd be huge lines for Mario Kart.
Especially if they had them like linked, especially if they had them like linked together. If you can imagine that over online play, they probably wouldn't. But even just having split screen, that would do very well. And I would think it's in Nintendo's best interest to have that in the hand, have people actually play this game, because there's a huge market out there that doesn't have a Wii U, and you need to excite them. And I think having people
this is one of the best places to do it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So that all is very surprising to me.
Yeah, I found it odd of like big misstep. I was like a lot of people. It's like, Nintendo, why aren't you there? Like, as you just said, there's plenty of games, but then all these other companies, and like the thing is, I'm trying to think of games that Sony, EA, and Capcom all have coming out this year, and I'm drawing a blank. I really don't know what much is coming out later this year. They really haven't announced much, but let's just take even Sega. I mean, maybe they're not ready to show off Sonic Boom, but they have other games they have ready to show, right? And I mean, even Nintendo even has. There wasn't. Bayonetta 2 playable at E3 last year. They could show that demo.
Right. Yeah. That's entirely correct. Well, I do believe Bayonetta was playable at last PAX, though.
Oh, was it? Okay, so they didn't want to repeat it. That makes sense. But yeah, I'm wondering what's going on. Whether PAX is just not that big of an event even anymore, despite the fact that it's sold out within a day, less than a day.
It's the largest. Both PAXs are the largest North American gaming conventions. So not having these companies have a presence there is definitely odd. Particularly when there are some big games coming out. But the fact that both Sony and Nintendo aren't going to be there at all is I don't know if that's just coincidence or not. It's impossible to say. I mean, we can only infer. I guess ultimately the question is this going to matter? Presumably these companies think it won't. Obviously they wouldn't do something that they think will harm them. But that doesn't mean they don't make mistakes, as we've seen with the Wii U. So, so what do you think about that? Do you think that they are, or at least the companies that have games coming before E3 are making a mistake not being at the show floor? I don't think. I really don't think they're making too big of a mistake by not being there. Yeah, it kind of sucks for the people who are going to PAX that they won't be able to try out some of these games. But I mean, Sony's been doing incredibly well with the PS4. The Wii U, of course, could use a boost, but Nintendo, as you said before, goes to their own beat, so who knows what they have up their plan. And I just have to assume for the others, like Capcom, Sega, and EA, they just don't have anything ready, or they're not willing to show anything yet that they want to put out there for people. Now, with Ubisoft, with it being so close to release of Watch Dogs, I'm very prepared to say that game will have a huge presence there. Microsoft, I'll be honest, I don't pay attention to Microsoft too much, so I'm not quite sure what they could be showing there. Right.
Square Enix, I like Square Enix, I'm not even sure what they could, maybe Murdered Soul Suspect. So each of these games have a few, but I'm just getting the feeling that the exhibitions won't be quite as large this year as it was previous years, because I'm looking down here through the exhibitor list, and I don't have a comparison for like PAX East 2013, but I almost want to say there's, and like I said, I could completely be wrong about this, but there almost seems to be more there this time than previous years. So maybe there's just all these people doing smaller venues rather than the whole big, take up an entire section expo halls we've had in the past.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't have the big companies there, like EA, Sony, Nintendo, that's going to open up a lot of floor real estate, because indie developers don't need the booze that those guys had.
Yeah.
So you can fit multiple, indie developers into the space of one Nintendo or one Sony, or even one Sega. And even Sega's booth, historically hasn't been huge, but it's still been sizable.
I honestly think that this making it more indie focused is not necessarily a bad thing, because I remember the last time I went, Transistor, which is the new game coming up from the guys who did Bastion, had one of the longest lines on the show floor.
Right.
And that's a pure indie game. So if more games like that could be shown off, because I'm pretty sure Shovel Knight's going to be shown off. I'm pretty sure a lot of these other indie games will get shown off, so people have an idea whether they actually want to try these. So it's not honestly a bad idea to have just a more indie focused game, but it is just sort of odd with such a presence in the past that they're not there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering if it marks a trend at all, and it very well may not. This is one data point. It could just be an exception. Who knows? But like with Nintendo in the last few years, you've seen them, pursue different avenues for getting consumers to play or hear about their games. Like with Nintendo Direct, basically streaming the news directly to their consumers. And then you have, like last year during E3, they had the Best Buy, equivalent where you could play the games at E3 at Best Buy. So I wonder if it might suggest a shift in how these companies might be going about, how they portray these games, especially with because Nintendo, I emailed Nintendo asking about this, and they got back to me with an official response, and they mentioned that though they won't be at PAX, there will be a variety of opportunities for consumers to get their hands on Nintendo products in 2014. So when they say variety, that seems like it means more than just one or two. So it makes me very curious what they mean by that. It could mean, this suggests that they're going to do some things maybe a little more outside the box than they usually do. It could mean that they'll be doing the Best Buy thing again, where you can play E3 games. But they can even go further than that. Like, what if they provided demos, for instance? During E3, you can download right to your Wii U and 3DS to play for a few days.
That'd be pretty cool. I mean, to have a limited time demo, like for Mario Kart, that would be huge, I think. Well, that's, of course, E3's afterwards, but let's say E3 was before Mario Kart's release. To have like a weekend demo for that would be huge. Yeah. People would play it. I mean, I know you and me would be just playing that nonstop all weekend.
We'd be all over it. The only problem, with that, if they do that exclusively, is that that's only appealing to an existing, consumer base, the people that already own a Wii U. But even outside that, it does sound like Nintendo's going to have even more events throughout the year. Which, yeah, I'm just curious, what else that could be. I mean, last year we did see something similar with where I think, what was it, Bed and Bath or something, or Bed Bath and Beyond. I could be getting the venue wrong, but Nintendo had like Mario 3D World demos at some like department store, basically, which isn't something you normally associated with selling Nintendo games.
Well, they sort of have that this year also as well with the deal with Pennzoil with Mario Kart.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're at South by Southwest. Yeah, they had the whole Mario Kart track set up, like with a go-kart thing, and you could shoot green shells, like virtual green shells or whatever. So yeah, it does seem like Nintendo might be exploring new avenues, and maybe PAX just isn't among them. And so assuming that's the case, is that going to be reflective? Is that what's going on with these other companies too?
And I know it's affected us already because you were planning to go there, and I believe you canceled your ticket by now, right?
Yeah, I actually canceled everything. I saw Nintendo drop out, then I saw like a whole bunch of other companies not going, and I'm like, what is the point of me flying across the country to cover? Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy PAX, but a lot of these games, or most of these games, will also be at E3. And at this point, it wasn't, the investment wasn't worth it, especially with our, heavy Nintendo demographic. And there being very little to see of them at the show, aside from, some indie developers being there, like Renegade Kid, who I actually would love to play, more of their games. But, it's hard to justify the expense, when major games and major companies aren't going to be there.
I have some friends going, so I think I'll probably end up going as well.
Oh yeah, and actually that was part of it. It's like, I don't need to go if you're going to be there. There's no reason for me to go at all.
I can easily cover everything that we need to cover while I'm there.
Right, exactly. So yeah, it'll be curious to see how things shake out for PAX Prime coming up in, I believe, late August typically. Again, this could just be, a complete exception. PAX Prime might just be how it always has been, where most companies are there. Especially because they will, that comes out near the end of the year, after E3, when companies do want to show off, their quarter 4 games.
That's a perfect timing for that sort of thing. It's always PAX East has always been odd with their timing as far as like what games do we really have coming out this time?
Right. Whereas presumably coming in quarter 4, we'd have maybe Smash Brothers, maybe Hyrule Warriors, and whoever else, whatever else Nintendo might announce at E3 this year. And that's not even counting whatever 3DS games that they might have then. Yeah, so it'll be, I'm just curious to see what happens, see how PAX East turns out next year. But, yeah, so that's our thoughts on PAX. Pretty much covered everything I can think of. So,
yep.
Thanks for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We post all kinds of things there at GameXplain. And you can find links to them in the description below. And, of course, keep an eye on GameXplain.com for more on PAX and other things gaming as well. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
See you guys there.